and I'm sure a lot of fan bases can agree or can kind of feel this way, but Penn State coming into the 2020 season was going to be one of the best teams in the country. They're a unanimous top 10 team. Everyone, of course, knows Micah Parsons, and the year he was supposed to have, they played Ohio State at home, and most likely going to be a whiteout game. They had a decent non-conference schedule game to travel to Virginia Tech, so they had a good resume, a schedule that was kind of there for the taking. Look, we're not going to beat Ohio State every year. So when you have a good opportunity to do so, obviously you want to take advantage of that. And so the schedule looked really nice. The depth looked really nice. People around State College are hoping it was going to be one of those years where, a couple breaks go our way, we could be looking at the Big Ten championship and possibly sneaking in the college football playoff. So from a Penn State point of view, I'm heartbroken just because I know how good they could be. But no, at this time, I'm not going to be converting. I truthfully don't think any of these other schools are going to be playing football anyway. I don't think converting would save me from what's eventually going to be the inevitable.
And when it comes to Penn State, Micah Parsons, he's the most elite linebacker prospect in his draft class. So with him, some people might say, him not playing this year won't hurt that much. You can check his tape, his measurables. But a guy like Shaka Toney, how does that affect him?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. Shaka Toney, really one of the more raw, athletic defensive ends in the country in the way he kind of plays. Yeah, Micah Parsons is going to be fine. He's going to find, his way on an NFL roster one way or another. But a guy like Shaka Toney who, people in State College know, but especially as you kind of get into the national scene, they know of him, but they don't know him as being the more dominant defensive ends, kind of like Micah Parsons is in the linebacking core. So Shaka Toney definitely needed to put a couple good games together to show that he can stop the run more consistently. And also, he tended to show up every once in a while, and then when he did, he would have those big, crazy games. I think he had 5 sacks his sophomore year against Indiana. But there's some times where he did disappear for a little bit. So it definitely hurts a guy like Shaka Toney more than it would hurt maybe Micah Parsons, for sure.
It's weird because I'll take the Pac-12, for example. People were like, Clay Helton, this is kind of a do-or-die season for you. James Franklin, on the other hand, because there was so much talent, so much hype, and people assume they're going to be better, how do you think this affects the hot seat for at least the Big Ten coaches?
It's an interesting one because a Clay Helton version in the Big Ten would be kind of like Scott Frost in Nebraska. Scott Frost was looking at a do or die situation there. Martinez is back and supposedly finally healthy. They have a weaker Big Ten West than hopefully previous years. Wisconsin obviously is still going to be really good. Iowa lost a lot, but still are going to have some weapons. And then Minnesota, they have to be a little bit worse than last year just because of how much they lost. So Nebraska was at least hoping they could make some noise, at least get the bowl eligibility. And so I think it's hard to measure these coaches, right? And we don't really know what's going to happen. We don't know when we're going to be playing football next. Heck, we don't even know how they're going to be recruiting because the NCAA just extended that dead period through September. So we don't know very much about anything. So it's hard to kind of measure these coaches. But yeah, for a guy like James Franklin, it does stink because this is one of those years, right, when you circle when you're doing all these recruiting classes, you got to say, hey, this is the year we could have something really special. And so when you don't hit on those, it's harder for those kind of programs, right? Like the Clemsons, the Ohio States, the Oklahomas, they're going to be okay every year, most likely, regardless. But the schools that aren't going to recruit like as well as them and are looking to kind of tie a couple recruiting classes together, I'm thinking the Oklahoma States. I'm thinking even the Washingtons. Those kind of teams want to put it all together in multiple recruiting classes and then make a run at the conference championship every 2 to 3 years instead of every single year.
And with Nebraska, he said, he would come out and they want to play regardless, and they'll, try to play beyond other means. I'm like, well, you got your face kicked in the Big 12, and you've been getting your face kicked in the Big 10. I don't necessarily know if that's the best move for some of the worst teams, you know, in some of these conferences. Like UConn just canceled their season altogether. And can we be honest? Like, were you like, oh no, don't do that? Oh wait.
Yeah, there's lots of UConn jokes out there. Yeah, Nebraska, it was just pretty much noise, right? I mean, they're getting, you know, over $50 million being part of just the Big Ten network and what they kind of get out of that fund. It would be the silliest thing in the world to back out of the Big Ten conference, try to join another conference, all in the idea that maybe you get to play 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, games. It doesn't make any sense because you might make a couple $1 million, but starting next year, you're going to be losing a lot. And like you said, Nebraska hasn't been, you know, setting the world on fire by any means. It's not like they're in an Ohio State position where they're going to bring some wins to that conference. I mean, really, they shouldn't even be, you know, having those conversations at all. Someone mentioned possibly going to the American Conference, and I was like, they would be 4th or 5th best in the American this year, behind Cincinnati, Memphis, UCF, and others. So, yeah, Nebraska needs to kind of slow down a little bit. I understand they're passionate about what they want to do. It's kind of no surprise that Nebraska and Iowa seem to be one of the teams that wanted to kind of play the season regardless. But no, I think all that talk, even Ohio State, I mean, it died down pretty fast because I think everyone realized, you know, how expensive it would be and how detrimental it would eventually be to the program.
And especially for Nebraska, they probably get clapped in the Mountain West too.
Yeah, Boise State would definitely be favored over them as well.
Yes.
So. It was interesting. They were going to play Cincinnati this year, so that was going to be a really good game at home for them. So that's going to be one of the ones that are going to be sorely missed this year.
Nebraska might just have to have a death match with Rutgers. It just might have to go down that way in Piscataway.
Well, you know, they were actually originally going to play Rutgers in the first game of this Big Ten schedule. So I think that was kind of the funniest thing. Is like, okay, that we're worried about coronavirus, and then they're going to send Nebraska across the country to play at Rutgers, who's had, you know, shut down twice now due to coronavirus.
Yeah, and it's the people who really want to play. Like, you look at a Jim Harbaugh, who just can't beat Ohio State and can't stop running his mouth. What comes first with Michigan? Like, them just getting rid of him, or like football ceasing altogether? Because I did not have it going down this way. I would have thought he would have got fired before, like, we go into a pandemic and no one can play football, and he's still saying that he's cracked the numbers. Like, that's crazy.
You know, Harbaugh, Michigan would be insane to get rid of what Harbaugh has done. I mean, I know he hasn't beat Ohio State yet, and I think that will eventually wear down Michigan fans. But at the same time, they're winning 8, 9 games, sometimes even 10 games every year. They're still recruiting second or third best in the conference. You can't ask for much more, right? Because if you go out and you get rid of Harbaugh and you bring someone else in, you're now running the risk of being worse than where you actually were when you had Harbaugh. So it's hard for me to imagine them going somewhere else, especially with him being a Mexican guy, and that matters a lot to a school like that. So I don't see them going anywhere as long as he can kind of keep his mouth shut and then eventually find a way to beat Ohio State. And look, I mean, I know right now Ohio State looks impenetrable, but we don't know a lot about Ryan Day. Like, obviously, he seems to be a really good quarterback whisperer, and he seems to manage the program well. But it's really easy to do when you're managing and coaching, you know, in the footprints of Urban Meyer. Like, things are going pretty well right now. You know, it's not that hard to kind of keep the ship heading in the right direction. I'm curious in a couple of years where that program is, and if anybody like a Penn State or Michigan or heck, even maybe a Minnesota just picked up a commit in Ohio today, if they can catch up. They don't have to catch them, but they can just narrow that gap a little bit more. What's going to happen at Ohio State? So Michigan fans, you know, they're just going to hold on to what they have, and then hope that eventually Ohio State comes back down to earth sooner than later.
And, you know, since you are in Alabama, I'm just curious, what's going on in the high school scene over there? Like, are they planning on playing? Like, are kids gearing up over there?
Yeah, it's weird because Auburn, Alabama is so close to the border. And so Alabama and Georgia are kind of actually doing two different things as far as high school sports right now. So, like, some games the Alabama schools had scheduled for against Georgia schools, like in the non-conference at the beginning of the year, those were originally canned. Kids are back in school now. As of right now, I believe the high school football season is still going to happen. But just like everything else, it's just so fluid and ever-changing. I would be shocked if they play their entire season, but as of right now, I believe the conference games, at least in Alabama, are still on.
And with that, as you mentioned, everything's very fluid. As it is now, we have Big 12, SEC, ACC playing. If they finish the season, is the champion really the champion? Do you put an asterisk on it? Do you call it something else? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I hate to be the negative Nelly here and tell you, but I just do not see any possible way that this season actually happens in any regard. I just don't see it. Even for down here, people think, we're going to play no matter what. We're going to play no matter what. The Big 12 just released their schedule a couple days ago. Since then, schools have already came out and said, we're going to be down to 25%. We're going to be down to maybe 5%. Hearing a lot of different things like that. That's exactly what a Big Ten was a week ago. So I'm not that confident in anything that's related to we're definitely going to do this or we're definitely going to do that. Either way. But I can tell you this, that it's not going to get better all of a sudden. And this idea or this concept that things are just going to be okay seems to be the reason why we're in this big mess to begin with. I mean, cases are still rising. Things are not getting all of a sudden better. And now schools are opening. And my thing is this. Look, if you talk about this as a whole, and I agree with the people that say it's hypocritical to have all the students back on campus, but no college football. I agree with that point. I don't think students should be at campus at all, to be honest with you. But the fact that they are there, that's the bigger risk to the college football program than the actual games, right? Like, I'm not worried about the college football players getting sick during their games on Saturday. I'm worried about what they do during the week. And now you're hearing reports of places like Tulane that are only testing once a week or once every 2 weeks. That's the scary thing. Like, those things are not going to be okay once all of the colleges are back opening. So it's fun to think about who could possibly win the national championship in this 3 Power 5 conference league. But I just don't think anything like that's going to happen at any point, especially with the stuff with Florida State right now and there's transparency with the testing.
Yeah.
Certainly Syracuse isn't testing well. I wouldn't be surprised if the ACC or the Big 12 are next. I'm leaning towards the ACC right now. And if one of those goes, I mean, it's pretty much all going to go from there. Because right now, you have the Power 5, and 3 are saying yes, and 2 are saying no. But once that third flips, I mean, all the pressure then goes on the other 2. So, unfortunately, I just don't see a way that a season happens. And, hey, I could be wrong, but, I mean, this virus isn't just going to go anywhere. And the fact that I was hoping this college football cancellation would kind of make people wake up to the idea that we need to take this more seriously and get this over with. But instead, it's actually sort of kind of split the country even more and made us all a little bit more divisive, which is unfortunate to see.
Damn, you're right about that. But great stuff, Corey. Before we let you go, why don't you let people know what you got coming up, where they can find you, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys, for having me on. I appreciate it a bunch. You can find me on Twitter, HardcoreCFB. I'm also on every single podcast place that you can think of at Hardcore College Football. Also on YouTube, Hardcore College Football. And if you're a fan of NCAA Football 14, I've been streaming a little bit more. There's this little G12 league we're in, kind of replace the college football season. So we've been playing some NCAA 14. We have 12 streamers. We all stream on Twitch. And we put together a little dynasty. We're going through it right now. I think we're only like in week 4, so we're having a good time with that. So
wait. We got to have you on to talk more about this because we're all NCAA 14
dude,
fans.
Whenever you want, yeah. We just started this about a month ago. So, Yeah, it's just, we got 12 consumers, 12 guys that